So today, we're going to dig into a real puzzle, something happening right at the heart of modern Sweden. It's this strange, nagging feeling that society is getting more and more dangerous, even when some of the most important statistics are telling us the complete opposite. Let's try and make sense of this paradox. And this is really the million-dollar question, isn't it? You probably feel it yourself when you scroll through the news. It feels like there's this constant drumbeat of stories about shootings and gangs. But the data? Well, it tells a much more complicated story. So, what is really going on here? Okay, so this slide just lays it all out, plain and simple. On the one hand, you've got public fear of violence, which is just through the roof. But on the other hand, the actual statistical risk of being a victim of lethal violence has dropped by an incredible 30% since the 1980s. I mean, how can both of these things possibly be true at the exact same time? All right, to get our heads around this, we first need to dive into what the source material calls Redsland's paradox, or the paradox of fear. It's all about trying to understand this huge disconnect between the hard data and what we actually feel in our day-to-day lives. And here it is. This is the absolute key to unlocking this whole thing. The answer isn't really about the amount of crime, it's about its character. The very nature of what crime looks like, who the criminals are, and who the victims are, well, it has been completely turned on its head in the last few decades. So how about we do a little then versus now? Let's explore what the source calls dåtidens brott mot nutiden. Basically, crime in the olden days versus crime today. We're going to put the mid-80s side by side with today to see just how radical this shift has actually been. You know, what's really fascinating here is how lethal violence has changed. Back in '85, it was often impulsive. Think about alcohol-fueled arguments that spiraled out of control, usually ending in knife fights, and almost always happening indoors, away from the public eye. Fast forward to today, and it's calculated. It's gang hits with automatic weapons in public places, parks, subways, even shopping malls. So even if the statistical risk to you is low, the psychological impact on everyone is just massive. And hey, it's not just about violence. Take a look at property crime. Back in the day, criminals stole stuff you could actually touch, your car, your stereo, cash from a drawer. Today, well, thanks to better alarms and less cash lying around, those crimes are way, way down. But they've been replaced by something way more sneaky and widespread: mass digital fraud that targets your bank account directly. And this right here brings us to the absolute heart of the matter: brott som affärsverksamhet, or crime as a business. See, crime isn't just a social problem anymore. It's become a highly organized professional industry. So, what do we actually mean when we say crime as an industry? We're talking about a structured, systematic operation. The goal isn't just a quick smash and grab anymore. No, it's about generating huge, low-risk profits that then get reinvested, almost like venture capital, to fund other criminal activities, especially the gang wars we're seeing on the streets. Yeah, and check this out. This slide basically shows you their business plan. It's a pipeline, really. It all starts with these digital fraud schemes that hit ordinary people. These things pull in billions of kronar with a pretty low chance of getting caught. And that money, that becomes the seed money, the venture capital that pays for the entire gang operation, the weapons, the salaries for new recruits, and the violent conflicts over territory. You know, there's a quote in the source material that just nails it. Trying to stop the violence alone is like trying to treat a fever without fighting the infection. As long as these fraud schemes are pumping out billions, the gangs will always have enough money to buy more weapons and keep the wars going. It totally reframes the problem, doesn't it? The shootings aren't the disease. They're a symptom of a massive financial problem. Okay, so you're probably asking, how on earth did we get here? How did this massive criminal engine get built in the first place? Well, the answer lies in what the source calls digitaliseringens säkerhetslucka, the huge security gap that was created by Sweden's incredibly fast push to digitalize everything. Let's just walk through the timeline for a second. In the 2000s, Sweden rushed ahead with these amazing convenient tools like Bank ID and Swish. Life got so much easier. But security? Yeah, that was kind of an afterthought. For years, as digital fraud just exploded, the blame was put on the victims. It actually took until 2022 for the Supreme Court to step in and force the banks to finally take some financial responsibility for their own security flaws. And this quote, man, it just perfectly sums up the trade-off we all made, probably without even realizing it. The chance of getting violently mugged on the street went down, sure, but it was replaced by this constant, invisible risk of having your life savings drained while you're just sitting on your couch. When you boil it all down, something fundamental happened. A core job of the government, making sure its citizens have secure identification, was basically handed off to private banks. And in that vacuum, where nobody could agree whose job it was to fix the problems, organized criminals found the perfect breeding ground. It's like the back door was left wide open, and they just walked right in. All right, so let's tie all of this together. It's time to reframe our whole understanding of the new hot build-in, what the new threat-facing society really looks like today. We can't talk about this without talking about the media's role. Because the news focuses so much on the spectacular visual violence, the shootings, it creates this experience gap. We end up feeling a high personal risk from something that's statistically very unlikely to happen to us. Meanwhile, the much more common invisible threat of digital fraud gets way less airtime. And because of that, all the public pressure gets aimed at the symptom, the violence, instead of its financial cause. So, here it is, the big shift, laid out nice and simple. We've gone from a world where the main criminal threat was visible, physical, and pretty impulsive, to a new world where the biggest threat is invisible, digital, and incredibly organized. And look, if the problem has changed this dramatically, then the solution has to change too, right? The real challenge going forward isn't just about more police on the streets or tougher prison sentences. It's about fighting a much more complicated battle, securing our digital world and shutting down the money pipeline that makes all that violence possible in the first place. So I guess I'll just leave you with this one last question to chew on. When we think about what's really making our society feel unsafe, where should our focus be? Is it on the shooter on the street? Or is it on the invisible digital system that put the gun in his hand?